Future Fund, which will provide 30,000 additional homes that are affordable or social, 4,000 of which will be reserved for women and children escaping domestic violence, will provide funding for veterans at risk of homelessness, will provide $100 million for emergency housing, will provide support to repair Indigenous housing in remote communities should be passed. Now, those opposite, and you can argue during the break if you want, that you're against $10 billion of funding because you think it should be $20 billion, or whatever figure you want to pluck out.
And blah, 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 blah. You see how many excuses they come up with? Clowns. All these rules now, all these regulations. Oh my God. I can't do a rent freeze. Can't do rent controls. But the reason is, it's because of the Constitution. However, if the Governor General of Australia was to pass on the message or himself decide that we are going to war because something, all he has to do is get it pushed through the Australian Parliament, and these same clowns that they just can't give you rent controls, they can't freeze that rent, they will push you through into a war, into conscription in 90 minutes. Probably less. It will take less time than a football game for them to just decide that you are fair game for conscription. And guess how it will happen? It will happen just like in that country everyone loves to criticize, in Russia. People in the medical profession, people in the IT professions will be exempt from mobilization. You, however, you and me and most of us dummies, well, we're going to be fair game. Because there's no draft and there's no war without eugenics in mind. That's just how it works. It's how it's always worked, more or less, and that's really how it works in the modern organized world. The Russians received their marching orders from, well, the reserves did anyway. They have a huge pool of reserves, and they received their marching orders inside their MyGov inbox. Does that sound familiar? Do you have something like that in Australia? You have exactly that. It's called a MyGov inbox. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure how I can disassociate myself with that thing. Because the way it happened in Russia is, if the email went in there, it was regarded read and accepted. Now, if that worked smoothly in one country, it will be implemented in other countries. There's no two ways of thinking about that. So where does eugenics come in? Well, it's not being widely talked about, but if you look at what's happening in Ukraine itself, Zelensky is doing a lot of hiring out of the, let's call it, shallow end of the gene pool. A aura of normality, an illusion of normality is being kept up in the bigger cities, and the smaller towns and the villages are getting rounded up and sent to their final destination for most of them. And Why would that be different in any other country? Do you really think it's a fair lottery? These same clowns that are going to push that through in probably 90 seconds to start getting Aussies conscripted. I'm willing to bet a lot of them have, or are able to fairly reasonably arrange for their next of kin to be somewhere outside the country in this sort of event. And yeah, it's not very rarely that I meet people in Australia with like 3 or 4 passports. Why not? And yeah, I guess if you're a poorer man, well, you're out of luck. If you're a renter in Australia, if you're a renter, you're not really a citizen if you're a renter. And you will be called upon to defend the country that's either got you living in a tent or you're a fair way on your way to living in a tent. Isn't that great? Do you want to go somewhere and fight in a war for a place that regards you as a second-class citizen? Perhaps this is an opportunity for a foreign service in our new age mercenary armies. This is something that's being spoken about more and more. Will it work in the modern age? Well, let me tell you, there is a lot of apathy from people that come to the West, to Australia here, people from South America, Central America, anywhere near the Himalayas, even Eastern Europe and the Middle East. These people are very apathetic about the places they come from. And when they come here and see organization, and pavement, I believe some of them will do anything. There's no thing they wouldn't do to obtain that permanent residency and citizenship. So I can see a lot of these people choosing to serve in the Australian military, but let's see what happens. It would probably take them a few decades to realize that they've been lured here, that the apathy about their former homeland is no accident, and that they're basically being used. They're going to use up their savings, they're going to be rent slaves, they're going to be mortgage slaves, all to prop up a system that simply does not want to let prices of anything drop, because that would be horrible, that would be unthinkable. But as far as I and my kind of human being living here goes, we don't want to serve. We don't want to fight in a war for a society where we are in one of the biggest continent-sized countries in the world, and we cannot have a piece of land at a reasonable price, because that would be sexist and racist. Just compare those desperate people I just told you about with another kind of person I've met pretty often here in Australia that has lived here since 2, 3, 4 years of age. Their whole life, they're an adult now in their 20s or 30s or even 40s, and they've never bothered to obtain citizenship. Never. They have absolutely no fear or quarrel about being an Aussie. Like that, they can live here. No one's going to make them leave. And it's because they've moved here with some money, and basically they're safe. And at some point, when some of them, for some reason, every now and then they decide to obtain citizenship. I have met multiple people like this. All the while, you have a desperate creed of people coming in, and they absolutely would do anything to keep their foot in the door here, to keep the door from closing on them. It's incredible, the contrast and the contradiction of life in this place. You have these people born here running around with 3 or 4 passports that can shift to any country, any one of 3 or 4 countries that they want to at any time of any real crisis, and you've got these people that can just dwell here and never have to obtain citizenship and never have to worry, whilst you got the really desperate ones that would do anything to obtain citizenship. And you've got people like me who have citizenship, but I'm just wondering, what is the point of having the citizenship if anyone that has any wealth, born anywhere in the world, is automatically an Australian citizen and can just come here and be above me in the pecking order? Like, what exactly is the point of this? Yeah, what's the point? And all the while you've got a constant inflow of competition for resources from the desperate grind kind of people. And yeah, you got to ask yourself, would I sacrifice myself to defend this sort of society?